Welcome to How We Scaled It for Design Teams, a show that explores the journey through the arduous road to growing a successful design practice. I'm your host, Adam Perlis, founder and CEO of Academy, a UX staffing and recruiting agency. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Meredith Black, former head of design operations at Pinterest, founder of the DesignOps Assembly and a DesignOps consultant. She's also the co-author of the DesignOps Handbook, and Meredith has become one of the most authoritative figures in the DesignOps community. Welcome, Meredith.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here, Meredith. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited to chat today. Before we get started, I'd love to give the audience a little bit of context about you. Maybe you can share a bit about your background and also what you're up to now.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Meredith Black, and I currently live in Monterey, California, so just a couple hours south of San Francisco. Moved down here about 4 years ago after I left Pinterest. And so that was kind of my entrance into a new type of working style, I would say. So I was starting remote before remote actually. A little bit about me and my background. As Adam said, I run a DesignOps community called DesignOps Assembly. I currently consult with companies all around the world on how to help better run their design teams, build design operations teams, and everything in between. Prior, I was at Pinterest, and then prior to that, I was at Facebook, where DesignOps kind of first started to really take off in the industry. And then prior to that, I was just at a design firm called Hot Studio, and then IDEO prior. So my whole career has kind of been in the design world. I've never traditionally been an actual designer. I've just always been surrounded by designers, and basically every single job I've had.
Wow, that's an incredible background and resume, and awesome to hear about all those experiences. And really, you're one of the people that I know is being foundational to the design ops practice. And, I think that, for our listeners who might not be so familiar with the concept, because it has kind of evolved and become kind of a new thing, I'd say, over the past 5 to 8 years. Could you help define design ops in the simplest terms possible?
Sure. So I would say design ops is everything but design on a design team. So if you're thinking about your designers and you're thinking about your designers, project planning, managing scope, managing budgets, having to try to hire people, all of those things, learning and development, all of that usually kind of goes off the plate of the designer or the design manager or the design leader and goes on to design operations. So that way, designers and design leaders can worry about the quality of the design and the usefulness of the design, while somebody else kind of takes care of everything else on the back end of things. So it's not a very sexy or glorifying job because so much of it is done on the back end. But the real goal of this job is to help designers and design leaders do their best work and get the best product out there to market.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great to break it down in such simple terms for the folks who are listening. What are the things that kind of led you on this journey, as you spearheaded really design operations at Pinterest, probably one of the first people to have done that there, as I understand it. Yeah. But tell us about how you came into that.
Totally. So it was really interesting. So let's just take a little step back. For those who have been in the ad agency world or the design agency world, there is a very common role, which is the producer or the account manager. And so I was basically doing that role in the design world and the agency world for a while. And what happened is when I started working at Hot Studio, which was it was about 75 people. Maria Giudice was the CEO and the design leader there. And, we were a very small 75-person design agency working with kind of some of the best and biggest brands all over the place. And the producer, the account person, was like really in charge of managing the relationship, but also helping the designers and kind of being that buffer between the designers and the client, so to speak. And what happened is Hot Studio was acquired by Facebook. Facebook was Hot Studio's client for a period of time. And, over the months, we went from 2 designers down at Facebook to 20 designers down at Facebook to then the acquisition, taking 75 people down to Facebook. When I say down, I mean from San Francisco to Palo Alto, for those who are not in the Bay Area when I mean that. And so, so at the time, it was really interesting. My boss, Courtney Kaplan, who she actually was going on maternity leave 3 days after the acquisition. And so she was like, okay, I got to go. Like, I can't stay. Like, Godspeed, And she had the baby. The baby's healthy. The baby is now way into school. But so there was this period of time where there were only a couple of us. There was a few of us from the producer side that were also part of the acquisition. And so we went into Facebook and we were just at the very early stages, just trying to figure out, like, where do these designers go, right? You have designers that have been in an agency that have never been in-house or in a product environment, now working with product managers and engineers on a daily basis, literally sitting with them. And so, the first thing we did was we made sure that we were pairing the right designers with the right skill sets to the right projects, which is really important, right? And so we wanted to make sure that everybody had a soft landing into Facebook, felt comfortable, with their teams, felt comfortable what they were doing, what they were designing, all of that, and just really making sure they had a support system. And so, while that acquisition and that transfer took a long time, to be honest, because when you're at an agency, you have clients and you have contracts. And so you have to narrow, you have to wind down these clients and these contracts and then ramp designers at Facebook, right? And so there's a whole game of Tetris being played while this was all happening. So we were doing that. We were introducing, design operations into Facebook. Courtney came back from maternity leave and really started kind of taking it over and trying to evangelize it even more so within Facebook. And she did an amazing job. Right around that time, Bob Baxley, who is now the SVP of ThoughtSpot, or SVP of Design at ThoughtSpot, he was running design at Pinterest. And he was looking for somebody who could just get things done very quickly. He had a very tiny design team. His role was to build that design team up. This was very, very early days of Pinterest. There were only 8 designers. I think I was the 9th person on the team. And so he really just needed somebody to come in and just help with all of the operation stuff. And that's where kind of design operations, or that's kind of how it started. In a way, there were other people out there, just so you know, who were doing it. Most, notably is Lindsay Schweigler, who was at Uber, who went to Dropbox and is now at Apple. There's, Elise Eshell, who was at Spotify. And so there were a couple of us doing the same thing. So it wasn't just like Kristen Skinner and Peter Merholt came from Adaptive Path. They got acquired the same time Studio did. So there was this kind of momentum happening where there were a lot of us talking about the same things. It just wasn't truly formalized yet. And so I think Lindsay Schweigler actually had the first formalized DesignOps name. And so it was her and Elise and I, and we met Lindsay over time, but Elise and I, we found each other on LinkedIn and we were like, hey, you're doing what I'm doing. Will you be my friend? I have what are we doing? And so that's how our friendship kind of started. And that's how her and I started evangelizing DesignOps and truly trying to build this, bring in other leaders, evangelize it with other design leaders in Silicon Valley and whatnot. So those were the original days where you could still fit a few DesignOps people in a room and talk about org charts and talk about some of these things. But I think what was really beneficial is that design leaders were becoming incredibly receptive to this role. And I think part of it was a lot of these design leaders also came from design agency or design and agency backgrounds prior, right? Because design hasn't, unfortunately, always been in the product world. And so they were kind of like, wait a minute, I've always had this role. Why don't I have this role now in-house? And so I think it was a much easier sell for design leaders than it was anybody else in these companies. They were like, why do you need this role? Why can't designers just do everything? And so I think it was kind of like a leap of faith, I think, with a lot of these companies to be like, let's bring this type of person in. Let's show the value that this can bring to a design team And if this works, we can grow this out. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. So that's kind of, I think, that's a very long-winded way of saying, like, that's really where, like, the inception of it came from, and really when it started in around 2014, 2015.
Wow, that's a fantastic story and journey. It's awesome to hear also about kind of like how this was kind of born out of the producer role at a lot of agencies. That's a role that, I come from the agency world as well, and I'm very familiar with that role. And I speak to a lot of producers who are thinking about kind of making a career transition. How do I go in-house? And there's a few avenues. One is, going sort of towards the product management kind of route, but then there's kind of the more design ops or program management side as well. That also is a great alignment of skills, right? So I think it's really cool to hear you say. I'm sure a lot of the people listening will be happy to kind of know that there's another area that they can go explore if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that, you started to mention was like, it was born out of a need, right? Like these companies had a problem or many problems that they were trying to solve. And so they turned to you to kind of help solve some of those. What were the obstacles like that you were facing maybe at Facebook? And then, maybe we can talk about what are the obstacles that maybe a company that's even smaller than a Facebook might face when it comes to establishing really their first design operations practice.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. And I don't think that there's a one size fits all answer, to be brutally honest. And I tell this to a lot of the leaders that I talk to, is like, don't necessarily copy what somebody else is doing because it might not work for you. I think when it comes down to evaluating if you need a design ops person or a practice within your organization, start with what are the pain points? Like, what are the pain points you are having? So as a design leader, are you not able to keep track of what everybody's working on? Are you not able to do as much recruiting and like hiring and interviewing as you want to do because you're so busy? Are you not able to put the right onboarding in place because you're so busy? So some of these questions I think that are like really instrumental to building a design team. Other questions, what does learning and development look like on your team? What does career frameworks look like? What does career growth look like? There's a huge span, right, of things. And if you're at a smaller company, you might just need like pure infrastructure. Like, I just need to know that like I can like find like file organization structure where we know where everything is. All of the right assets are there. We have a design system in place that everybody can use. Like very simple things that are going to save designers time, right? Instead of just having, like one of their assets on their computer and like crossing their fingers and adding it to one of their design sketches and being like, oh, well, that could work, even though it's like an iOS asset for like an Android, asset. Like all of these little things, like I think just kind of help speed things up, make life a little bit easier. So I think that's one thing. What is in your way and what is taking up the most of your time and what is moving you away from leading a team, inspiring a team, and making sure you're getting the best design quality out of your team. And if you're suffering in all of these other areas, then it's time to think, okay, what are one or two things I can get off my plate that are going to be like home runs for the team that allows me to have more focus on the team and somebody else coming in to help with some of these aspects. And so I'm very much a like, build the building, like have the building blocks. Don't just say like, I need a team of 5 or 10 design ops people, and then we'll figure out what they're going to do. This role is it's new when it's not new. So it's kind of the role is evolving, right? And so I think what's really important is that like there are still a lot of people in a lot of organizations and a lot of companies out there. They are becoming less, but they're still out there that don't understand what the role is. And so start with one person. Start with somebody who's going to be able to go in, start right away and just start making impact, just like low hanging fruit, and just start making impact and show that this role is valuable, and then start adding more people on. So it's more of an adoption and instead of forcing a role down people's throats, right? Because nobody wants to be told what to do. I think also design operations is also very much in tandem with people who love spreadsheets and love process and stuff like that. But like you use the word process in a creative environment and you kind of like suck the creativity out of things, right? And so it's, yes, there's process, but only use process if process is actually going to work. Don't use process for process sake, right? Use it because it's going to help and people want it and they're like going to adopt it and it's going to make them better and move forward and better with their designs. Don't just put process in place just to keep it there. And so it's a really fine balance when you're bringing your first person in, right? And I don't think that there's, I think it really depends on what design looks like at the company, what design leadership looks like, how much design is already respected in that company, because this person can come in and can be an advocate and can help evangelize for that, or this person can come in and just be like purely executional just to get a team.
Yes, I totally agree. Like, I mean, one of the biggest things, with hiring your first design ops person is it's really born out of the frustrations and the needs of the design ops or the design leader, where they're just overwhelmed. They have too many things going on. They don't have time to build a career ladder or an onboarding system or even deal with hiring decisions, or maybe those are the things that they want to be involved in. But either way, they need to start triaging some of the work to other people. Otherwise, they can't focus, on the thing that they've been hired to do, which is build a great product or service and lead a team. And so that's where I think design ops really plays this super essential role. And I agree that it's totally, on a case by case basis, you need to kind of assess the situation. And, it's happened to me many times in my career. Many times I had wished I was allowed to hire a design ops professional. But, frankly, the companies I was working for didn't want to pay for it. So I'm glad to see that it's growing as a profession and becoming more and more popular because it's absolutely necessary to, the efficiency and the success, I think, of any design organization.
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to add to that is when and if you are in a situation where headcount is an issue, the other way to look at it is if you have headcount for a designer and you don't have a headcount for a design ops person, if you might want to consider taking that headcount and putting it as a design ops person instead of a designer. And I think when you start to realize that some of your designers are doing like everything in the kitchen sink, and then you're like, wait a minute, if they weren't working 5 hours on this and they were actually at 5 hours of design, you're paying designers to do so much more than design. And that's kind of doing a disservice to the designer, right? And that's not to say that the designer shouldn't be responsible, or be held accountable, or be a leader, or take notes in a meeting and all of that stuff. But when the designer is doing more operational stuff than they are designing, take a step back and look how what percentage of all of your designers is doing that, and would it be worth swapping out one of those headcount for a designer and putting in an ops place, so that way the rest of the design team can work at full capacity and not be stuck with everything but design.
Yeah, absolutely. You're the founder or co-founder of one of the best design ops communities out there, Design Ops Assembly. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about the community? I found it to be an incredible resource personally to learn about the field, connect with other individuals inside of it, find out about job opportunities, resources, all sorts of stuff. But tell me more about, what led to its foundation and what you guys are up to today.
Sure. So it all goes back to 2015 with Elisa Shell, and her and I started talking about what is design ops and what are we going to do. And the one thing her and I both knew instantly, we had this instant friend connection. And I think we both were like, we're doing the exact same thing. Why are we creating the wheel? Why are we constantly recreating the wheel? Why can't we just learn off of each other? And so that's what we started to do, is we started to have regular meetings to be like, how is your road mapping going? How is your org charts looking? What kind of people are you hiring? What do you see out in the industry? And so we started, we weren't sharing proprietary information. We were literally just sharing what we were going through and how we could do better. And so then, Lindsay Schweigler, Michelle Morrison, like all of these people, Joanna Wilson, Adrian Elnett, we all started to meet together. And so we'd be like, okay, we're going to have a meetup in San Francisco. And then so we would come, and then soon, like shortly thereafter, a couple people would like fly in from different locations. And we were like, wow, this is really cool. Like there's really something here. So, we'd have another event, and then, we'd have these events quarterly, and we had no problem with companies offering up a conference room. And the agenda for these meetings was like purely, how can we learn from each other? What job opportunities are out there? And let's have a cocktail together and just get to know each other, because we're in this industry, and this industry is developing, and like we're in this hot mess together. So up to COVID, like prior to COVID, we were probably getting a little over 100 people per events, which was crazy. We just asked, the experts to come in and be like, hey, do you want to talk about this or that? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. And so we'd sit there very casual, like very, just like the bar was low, just people meeting other people in this field. And then COVID hit, and, we had to change the business. We had to change the model. I had already left Pinterest at this point, and I really wanted to focus on DesignOps assembly a little bit more, and like see what we could do and see how we could build this out a little bit more. And so during COVID, Elise and I would meet halfway between San Francisco and Monterey at Santa Cruz, and we'd like brainstorm, like, what are we going to do next? Should we try to do chapters? Should we try to do more events online? Should we do all of this stuff? And we decided the best and fastest and easiest way to do it is to have a Slack channel. We already had one, but there was barely anybody on it. And so we just shifted everybody who was a part of our meetups to be like, hey, since we can't meet up in person, why don't we meet up on Slack? We'd have, events on Slack. We'd do all of that. And, fast forward to now, we have close to 7,000 people on the DesignOps Assembly Slack channel. And we have a ton of different things happening at any given day, as Adam, And, it was really interesting timing too, because Elise, at the time she was like about to get married. Now she has a baby. And so she was like, I'm going to step back from the operational side of DOA. And so I brought on Adam Fry-Pierce. And so Adam and I have kind of been building DesignOps Assembly for the last few years together. And we still nag Elise every chance that we get, which is just fun and rewarding. But, what we've done now is we have this unique advantage point where we're starting to understand what DesignOps looks like in a bunch of different organizations, not just the ones that we came from. And we've got, design leaders leveraging the DesignOps Assembly Slack channel. We've got people who are new to the industry leveraging it. We've got people who are interested. We've got engineers. I mean, it spans the gamut, because people are really curious about what DesignOps can offer and maybe how they can leverage some of the stuff we've created into their own jobs. And so now what we are really focused on is we're really focused on education. And so we launched Learning Labs, which I can't believe we're already in our 6th session of Learning Labs. And Learning Labs are basically, we get the best and the brightest people in the industry to teach what DesignOps is, from like a fundamentals class all the way through an established leaders. And I think the thing that is interesting is that a lot of people who come to DesignOps, this isn't their first job. This isn't their first job out of college. This is like a natural progression from something else. And so you get a lot of folks who are like, I've been a producer. Oh, I've been an account manager. Oh, like I've maybe been an EA or a recruiter or a designer even. And so they start by taking the fundamentals just to learn like what the frameworks of DesignOps look like and how they could be different to other things. And then they can continue on learning in the classes. And then they get a cohort of people that they're like always connected to. Teachers have office hours, all sorts of stuff. So it just kind of becomes this community within a community. And for the folks who, aren't quite there yet, or, can't afford to take the Learning Labs, we offer all sorts of things. We offer like mentorship opportunities. We offer monthly chit chats where the community can just get together. We have events happening all of the time online. We have 21 global chapters where we've got chapter leads all over the world running events 4 times a year, which is really amazing. So that way local communities can get together. And so right now we're at this interesting place where there's a lot of forward momentum. And it's basically just the bandwidth issue of Adam and I to get this all done on top of everything else. So it's been an interesting ride. I don't think this is anything any of us expected would happen. But it's been really, really great to build a community and just to see people flourish within DesignOps, within all of these different industries. And I think, we're starting to see it's not just design operations isn't just in software product companies. Design operations is now in the Canadian government, the New Zealand government, the British government. We're talking Hyatt, we're talking IKEA, H&M. I mean, the sky is the limit. DesignOps just isn't just about software anymore. It's become a crucial part of these design teams all over the world in a bunch of different industries.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, amazing to see kind of from the earliest, parts of your journey where DesignOps didn't really exist yet, and it taking shape, into, some of these companies, and then eventually, you bringing that knowledge and expertise into these smaller communities and now growing it into such a large one. I mean, congratulations. That's a pretty impressive feat. You really, took your baby and it grew up, into an all-star. So kudos to you guys. I think, you and all the folks who have helped, establish the practice.
Thank you. I mean, I think that also goes to say, there's been so many people along this journey. We have so many people volunteering all of the time. And just, we kind of have this board of directors of all of the original people that were part of the original DesignOps crew, kind of helping shape and shift, shape this in a way that is beneficial for a lot of folks who have been in the industry for a long time, and also the people who are also trying to start. And I think, like I said, I think we're at this interesting point where DesignOps means a lot of different things right now. And so it's how do we grow this into something that is sustainable, and that is going to not just evolve into something else over time. And I think evolution is fine. Don't get me wrong. With
Sure.
designers, you used to have the UX designers and the visual designers that morphed into the product designers. I mean, I think evolution is fine and great. It's just, how do we do it in a thoughtful way where people are going to be able to feel like they can succeed and excel in their careers?
Yeah, absolutely. If people want to join the DesignOps Assembly, where can they go to find out more?
Sure. Yeah. Would love to have you. It's designopsassembly.com, and there's a big button that says join us, and you can click that button and we will send you an invite within 24 to 48 hours. Again, we have volunteers inviting everybody into the org. So it might take a little bit of time, but don't worry, we're on it. We'll get you in. And yeah, I mean, come explore. There's always conversations happening about a million different things on any given day. It's a pretty active Slack channel. I'm quite surprised at how active it is. I'm like, wait a minute, does everybody work, or are they just on the Slack channel? But all of the conversations are incredibly productive, and again, people are just there willing to share information about what they've learned or what they've gone through, or how to, better somebody else's day, or what's going on in certain situations. So if you're looking for education and a support group, definitely join us.
Awesome. And if people want to follow along with you and, any of the things that you're up to, where's the best place to kind of follow?
Probably LinkedIn, to be honest, right now. That's probably the easiest way. I'm not big onto this social media with myself personally, just because I don't have the bandwidth. But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So I think that's probably the best place to get me.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to mention, because we're on the same subject, At Academy, we've been working with a lot of design ops professionals, helping advise them about their candidacy, how to stand out as a design ops professional, or even make the transition, in your career to a design ops management type of role. And we actually produced a guide called the DesignOps Portfolio Guide, which a lot of design ops professionals don't realize that they could build a portfolio and tell their
Yeah,
story in a more visual way, and also tell their story of leadership, because a lot of design ops professionals are actually leaders within a team, even if they don't always have a direct report that is, coming into them. So a lot of great materials on
absolutely.
our blog, which we'll definitely put into the show notes. But Meredith, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time with us today. It was wonderful to hear all about, design ops, the growing field, and also your career, and thoughtful advice for, the people that are listening to this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to reach out.